Okay, let's dive in. We've got some really fascinating source material shared with us for this deep dive.
Hmm.
And it all centers around this question that, it sounds simple at first, but it gets complicated fast.
Right. What's the question?
Why is it just so challenging for people to stick with treatments for mental illness?
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
And we're looking specifically at a comparison that came up in the sources between psychiatric medications,
Okay.
which often seem like the easy path, right? A pill, maybe a shot.
It feels lazy. Yeah.
And then comparing that to something that feels, well, much tougher on the surface.
Yeah.
Medical ketogenic therapy, like a really strict diet.
Very demanding. Yeah.
So the core puzzle here, the thing this material really digs into, is this. If taking a pill is designed to be easy, why do so many people stop taking them?
Hmm.
And kind of the flip side, why are people exploring options like medical keto, which seems like a much heavier lift? What does the science and maybe just lived experience tell us about adherence? Sticking with it.
And it's important to say right off the bat, like this material really stresses, this isn't about bashing medication
No, definitely not.
or, holding up keto as some kind of magic bullet. It's really about trying to understand this fundamental struggle
Yeah,
with sticking to any kind of long-term therapy when you're managing serious health stuff.
makes sense.
And the source material makes a really important point about the language we use here. It draws a clear line between non-adherence and non-compliance.
Okay, what's the difference there?
So non-adherence is, well, it's basically a neutral term. It just means someone isn't following the plan exactly.
Right.
And it accepts there could be really good reasons. Side effects are too much. Maybe they can't get the treatment easily or they feel it isn't helping.
Or they just want more say in their own health.
Exactly. It leaves room for all that.
Right.
But non-compliance, especially the sources note in mental health care,
Yeah.
that one can feel really judgmental.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it can make people feel like they're being labeled difficult or bad just because they have concerns or questions.
Right, like you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. So for this deep dive, we'll be using non-adherence, just like the source material does.
Yeah.
It feels more compassionate, more collaborative.
Got it. So, okay, let's look at some of the actual data these sources present. Because the numbers on sticking with treatment, especially psychiatric meds, they were kind of surprising to me.
What do they find?
Well, for oral antipsychotics, for instance, the studies they cite show that a really big chunk of people, somewhere between 44% and 55%, just stop taking them within a year.
Wow, nearly half or more in just the first year.
Yeah. And you might think, okay, what about the long-acting injections?
Right.
Solves the forgetting to take it problem.
Right, seems logical.
But the material points out it only helps a bit. It reduces discontinuation by maybe 10 to 15%.
So an improvement, but not fixing the core issue.
Exactly. It doesn't solve the underlying why. Now, when we look at medical keto, the data's a bit different, depends on the situation.
Okay.
In epilepsy research, where it's been used therapeutically for way longer,
Decades.
about 60 to 70% of adults are still doing it at 3 months, which sounds pretty good.
Yeah, better than the med numbers initially.
But then it drops off quite a bit. Only about 29%, less than a third, make it to the full year mark.
Okay, so a big drop off there too.
But then there are these newer pilot studies looking at keto for things like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
Right, more recent research.
And there, the short-term adherence cited looks a little better. Around 65 to 80% managed to stay in therapeutic ketosis, like their ketone levels were in the target range.
For about 4 months.
Yeah, over 4 months.
So what strikes me looking at those numbers, just like the sources point out, is that, yeah, maybe the definition of adherence is slightly different, Yeah. Missing pills versus going over your carb limit. But the deeper thing, the shared truth, is that sticking with any of these long-term therapies, it's just hard. Period. Doesn't matter what it is.
And that's the really fascinating point, isn't it? Medication is designed for ease. Swallow a pill, get a shot once a month. It's meant to be low friction.
Minimal disruption.
Yet almost half the people stop. What does that tell us? What does it say about maybe the treatment itself or the system supporting it or just what people are being asked to live with day to day?
Well, the sources really dig into that why for meds. They list out quite a few reasons why it's hard, even if the act of taking it seems simple.
Like what?
Well, first, the side effects. The common ones. People talk about gaining weight, feeling really sedated or foggy.
Yeah.
Emotional blunting, like feeling numb. Sexual dysfunction is a big one, too.
Right. Things that really impact quality of life.
Hugely.
Yeah.
And then there are the more serious effects mentioned, things that can be permanent sometimes, like Lactation when it shouldn't happen, metabolic syndrome, which increases risk for heart disease and diabetes, and tardive dyskinesia.
That's the movement disorder.
Yeah, involuntary movements. And sometimes it doesn't go away even if you stop the med. Really scary stuff.
Wow. Okay.
And beyond the physical side, the material talks about the mental impact. People may be losing insight into why they need the medication in the first place, or feeling so numb.
That they lose motivation to take the thing, making them feel numb.
Exactly. It's a tough cycle.
Yeah.
Then add in just the practical stuff for getting doses, not being able to get to the pharmacy, insurance hassles.
And cost. Can't forget cost.
Oh, absolutely. Cost is huge. And one more really crucial thing the source highlights.
What's that?
It's that feeling of being labeled non-compliant, just for asking questions or voicing concerns.
Yeah, we talked about that word.
Right. Feeling like decisions are being made for you, not with you. That really undermines sticking with it. It feels imposed.
Okay, so even the easy option has a ton of hidden difficulties. Let's flip to medical keto then. The source presents this as, well, a completely different kind of hard.
Oh, absolutely. It's demanding in totally different ways. The sources detail what that looks like day to day.
Tell us.
You're talking constant food tracking, weighing every single thing you eat, logging it all meticulously.
Wow. That's a lot of effort.
It is. And then there's the social side. Think about eating out, parties, family meals. It creates real friction. You often end up bringing your own food.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Carb cravings, especially early on, are intense, physically intense. Some people get GI issues while adjusting.
Okay.
And the mental load is just
Yeah.
significant. The source used the phrase never winging it. You can't just grab something quickly. Everything requires planning.
Right. No spontaneity with food.
Pretty much.
Uh.
Plus, there's the financial piece again, but different. Buying specific high-fat whole foods consistently can add up. And the tools, like a keto monitor and the testing strips, often not covered by insurance, so that's out of pocket. It's a whole different set of barriers, but just as real.
And the source author's own story really illustrates this, right? They talk about struggling with both.
Yeah, it's really powerful. They share very openly about years of struggling with medication adherence.
Why specifically?
Just intolerable side effects, feeling like the meds were actually causing harm, not helping, and finding even the simple act of taking pills daily incredibly hard.
Hard how?
So hard that at one point they were actually required to take their doses in front of a pharmacist just to prove they were taking it.
Wow. That really shows easy isn't always easy.
Not at all. And then they talk about their keto journey, their first attempt years back. Failed pretty quickly. They just scrapped it, as they put it.
Why did it fail?
They admit they weren't doing the key things like the weighing and tracking we just talked about. They weren't precise, so they didn't get results, got discouraged, and gave up, instead of trying to figure out what was wrong. That's also a form of non-adherence, right? Giving up because it's too hard or not working how you expected.
Makes sense.
But then, their second try, the one over the last year and a half that's been successful, totally different approach.
How so?
They built a support team. They added other therapies alongside it. They were incredibly consistent with the diet, the tracking, all of it.
Yeah.
Put in serious hard work.
And then they saw results.
Exactly. Life-changing results, they said.
Mm-hmm.
But the point they really hammer home is, even being successful took immense effort and support, which just underscores how that workload and the need for support directly impact whether someone can stick with it.
So it really leads to this shift in thinking the source suggests.
Yeah, instead of asking, which one's better, meds or keto,
Right.
the more useful question is, what is each one actually asking of you? What are the real demands?
That's a great reframe. And the source kind of lays out that comparison side by side. Like daily action. Meds are low effort, take the pill. Keto is high effort plan, weigh, track, test every day.
Big difference there.
Then support systems. Meds have this built-in structure. Ideally, doctors, pharmacies, insurance may be helping.
Right, the system is set up for it.
But for keto, the source points out, the healthcare system isn't really set up to support it. You usually have to build your own network, find allies, educate yourself, become the expert.
Yeah, a lot more DIY required.
Feedback is another difference. With meds, it can be slow, sometimes unclear if it's working or if subtle side effects are creeping in.
Hard to tell sometimes.
With keto, the feedback can feel more immediate. You see your ketone levels change on the monitor. You might notice shifts in symptoms, good or bad, relatively quickly.
Right, more direct signals.
And the last one they compare is empowerment or control. Medication can sometimes feel very top-down, doctor-driven. You might feel a bit passive.
Like something's being done to you.
Whereas keto, because you're doing all that daily work, it can feel really empowering, like you're actively taking charge.
But it can also be isolating if you don't have that support network we talked about.
Good point. And what about just basic access? The source touches on that too, right? Saying both have barriers.
Absolutely. Both paths make assumptions and have real hurdles. For meds, it's often cost hundreds a month if you don't have good insurance.
Yeah.
Or finding a psychiatrist you trust and can actually get appointments with. Sometimes just getting your prescription reliably filled can be a struggle. Unstable supply.
Okay. And for keto?
The costs are different, but definitely there. The food budget might go up significantly. Paying for a knowledgeable coach or dietitian, if you can find one. The monitor, the strips adds up.
Right.
And maybe the biggest cost is just the sheer time and mental energy it demands.
Right.
Plus, finding that crucial support that's an access issue in itself. Not everyone has that readily available.
So wrapping this section up, the big takeaway from this material seems to be there's no simple winner. No easy path versus hard path.
Exactly. It's just different kinds of difficulty, different demands.
And maybe the most powerful point is this. If you, listening, have struggled to stick with either meds or maybe something like medical keto, it might not be some kind of personal failing.
Not at all.
It might just be that you didn't have the right kind of support or the right resources, or maybe the approach wasn't collaborative enough for that specific path to work for you.
Yes. And the sources really champion that message of, self-compassion and empowerment.
Oh, so.
Well, they say, look, if medication is working for you, if it helps you function and doesn't tank your quality of life, that's a win. Hold on to that. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about it.
Okay, good.
But if you are struggling with meds, if the side effects are brutal or it's just not helping enough, this material suggests it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to explore other things.
Like medical keto?
Like medical keto, especially if other treatments haven't worked out. It emphasizes that keto, while definitely hard work, is a serious science-backed intervention. It can be genuinely life-changing for some people.
But it takes work and support.
It takes work and support. That's the non-negotiable part.
Okay. So maybe a final thought here, drawing just from this source material, something to chew on. Remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be framed as this either-or battle. Medication versus keto.
Interesting point.
In some situations, the sources imply maybe it could be a both-hand approach, combining strategies.
Finding a balance.
Yeah. The key takeaway seems to be finding the mix of tools, the strategies, the support systems, whatever it is that will genuinely serve you personally and boost your quality of life the most.
That makes a lot of sense. Personalized approach.
So we really hope this deep dive gives you, our listener, maybe a richer way to think about these challenges, the very real, often unseen struggles of sticking with any long-term treatment.
Yeah.
It's definitely made me think about adherence differently and maybe reflect on what kind of support truly makes something sustainable.
And we'll just echo that closing thought from the source author. Just wishing you health and strength and maybe the confidence to speak up. Ask those hard questions and really take the lead in your own path to feeling better.